And in fact, thanks very much to all the panelists for their insights and comments. Now, I've done a terrible job of chairing, and we're now running a few minutes late, but we do have time for questions to the panel. There have been quite a number of questions coming into the chat. We'll certainly get through some of them, and those that we don't get, we'll try to include some responses in a note that will address some of the points that have been raised that we might not be able to talk about today. The first one I'll ask, and I'll direct this in the first instance to Russell, is the trade-off, or sort of comes to the trade-off between, if you like, smart systems for capturing data, or that you can deploy in the connected home and so on, that might give you at least provide you some of the capabilities that you need, that might alter the types of skills that you need, or the amount of skills you need to do retrofit in homes, for example. So I'd be interested in your views on the interplay between people and skills on one hand, and things like sensors and data capture and other techniques on the other, or is there no interplay between them at all? Russell, do you have any thoughts on that?
There's plenty of interplay, but we're a million light years away from it being relevant right now. We're struggling to get people to screw things onto a wall properly. So I think the sensors are useful, and they will be useful. One thing we're working very hard on is be able to use data in a smart way to overlay with our modelling information, so that we can show customers that we did what we said we would do. That requires, frankly, kit that's been available for quite a long time: temperature sensors, air quality sensors, electricity and gas meters. That will do the job for that. And we've already shown that we're pretty accurate with our overlays. So, you know, we're not far away from being able to get to potentially a position where we can offer energy performance contracts to householders, for instance. But the other thing that's critically important, though, we talk about technical stuff all the time, don't we? We can do retrofit, okay? If everyone's got the right motives and they're overseen properly, an impartial person is checking their work, not signing off their own work. But actually, the thing that we don't focus on enough is the journey, getting people from first bit of advice all the way through, and which over a process which might take years. So CRM systems, understanding which types of customer fall against which typical types of blockages on the process. How long do they take to get there? And the people that fall out of the process, why have they fallen out? What could we have done to solve that? That stuff's really hard, and it doesn't require a sensor. So, you know, I get it. It's all important. Everything's important. It's where our priorities sit right now. And, you know, if there are a number of projects out there that are installing sensors into buildings and happily collecting that stuff, that'll be brilliant, but it needs to be done at scale and quickly. But tell me the results in 5 years when we've solved everything else.
Fine. Rob, I don't know whether you have any perspectives from the work that you've been doing in retrofit that would support Russell's comments.
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely. There's a good report by Citizens Advice recently talking about the customer journey, how essential it is. I think, you know, it's really important that it's impartial, so that we can make sure the customer has that kind of that trust. And also a critical part of the customer journey going forward is not just about the physical changes to a property, but also trying to introduce things around behavior change at every part of a customer journey as well. So that's just something I'd kind of add to the piece on that one.
Great, thanks Rob. I'm going to change gears a little bit actually, and ask a question about the kind of the economic recovery associated with COVID and so on, and what opportunities that creates from a people and skills perspective, from your perspectives, your vantage point within the sector. And again, I'll start with Russell. Do you have any views on how the economic recovery will, the leveling up agenda, these sorts of things, which we know are important to government nationally, what kind of impact, beneficial or otherwise, I suppose, might have on the people and skills agenda? Any thoughts?
Well, provided the recovery is dealt with in the right way, it will have an enormous impact and an extremely beneficial one. every building in the UK needs renovating. Every village and town can provide the people to do the work. But throwing a bunch of money at householders and expecting them to sort it out is not the right way to do it. So I would do with the exact opposite of what the Green Homes Grant has done. I would building up the supply chain, the capabilities before I get householders excited. That's it in a nutshell.
Okay. Joe, did you have any thoughts on that?
In terms of green recovery, yeah, very much it needs to be local. There's so much work to do out there. You can't service it if you don't. I've done some work recently with FE colleges though, and you talk to them and you say this is coming, and they're like, no, I just want to train motor mechanics, you know. And actually, it really needs to be at that level, and it needs to be in the schools, the kids coming through, as well as the retraining. That we really need to get people with the right skills and the understanding that if they want a nice secure job and a good income, these are the places to go.
Thanks, Joe. Luciana, did you have any thoughts about the interplay between people and skills for local agendas and the COVID economic recovery?
Yes, so I think COVID has done a little bit of good in the way that it has really accelerated the ICT skill set within the general population. Look at us, we are doing this, we would never have been doing this. And so from that perspective, I think this has been a very fast transition to something which was in the works for a long time, moving slowly. So the digitalization agenda is definitely accelerated, which is a good point. On the other hand, we're also seeing a very clear breakdown between able and unable to access this digital infrastructure as well. So that's something that we need to be keeping in mind. With respect to the plans, the recovery plans, I think they are great, and from the perspective that there is a huge investment planned, but again, as already was mentioned, it has to be carefully executed because for example, the timescales which were set for in the first instance and then extended by a year for home renovations, well, it just doesn't work with the current situation at all. And even if it wasn't limited to the COVID, it's very, very tight timeline to explain to people the opportunities and to get them to engage with it. So yes, just to reiterate, it has to be local and it has to be consistently long-term repeated and preserved, not something that you throw in for a year and then take it away. Yeah, it needs to be building and accelerating on the same track.
Thanks, Rosanna. Rob, did you have any quick thoughts on the relationship between economic recovery and the work that you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, clearly, the way, I don't keep bashing the Green Homes grants, but that obviously it's kind of stage 5, and we haven't done stage 1, 2, and 3 yet in terms of what we need to be doing in terms of the training and the skills being ready. So that, I mean, I think from that we've seen the uptake actually from members of the public has been really good. There's been a big interest in the scheme. The issue has then come further down the line, and it's an example of how if you don't get the entire customer journey prepared in time, then it can lead to disappointment, it can lead to bad publicity, and you kind of are causing the same problems around lack of trust, lack of confidence in the situation, which just sets us back again. I mean, I think I've just started reading, I think there's a white paper on skills for jobs and funding around further education that came out a couple of weeks ago. So I'm just working through that. There might be other people that know more about that than I do. It just needs that kind of joined up thinking. It's obviously a big challenge, but things like the lifetime skills guarantee, I think, and loans for further education, but that kind of training to come at the same time as the engagement and the financing is obviously just critical.
Thanks, Rob. So I'm going to ask another question, which is drawn from a theme that's been in some of the comments made so far. We know that there's a big job of work to be done to get the right number of people in the right place with the right skills and the right forms of literacy and so on. And that's going to cost money. It's going to require, I suppose, investment in people and skills. And I'd like to ask each of the panelists, who's responsible for making that investment? Joe, I'm going to start with you.
Who's responsible for making the investment in skills? That's a really interesting question. I think it depends on all sorts of different, where people are in the supply chain, but ultimately the supply chain are the ones that will profit from a lot of this. So they should be making quite a bit of the investment. But I also think there's a place for quite a lot of low-key training that isn't necessarily heavy investment. So earlier on, we talked about carbon literacy training and the importance of carbon literacy training. It made me think, I mean, we're in the process of developing some adaptation literacy training to do similar things for adaptation. But it also made me think, actually, I think there's probably a place for things like retrofit literacy. And understanding the balance in the systems between the relative importance of different things and where they're likely to weigh up in the balance, because I think people have no feel for that at all. I mean, I'm a chartered building surveyor, so I have quite a lot of knowledge and training in this. I'm about to do a deep retrofit project on a house, and actually, I don't know what are the right things to do. So if I don't know, how does the man in the street know?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. But Sana, do you have any thoughts? You made reference to investment. Do you have any thoughts on where it should come from?
Yes, it should come from everywhere, because there are different streams that need to be supported by different stakeholders and players. So I mentioned, for example, the local authorities, which need to be investing into bringing the local players together. And this basic education is something that needs to be not even local, it needs to be centrally funded. The same way that we had these national campaigns on Don't Drink and Drive, because it was a common good, which was useful for everybody, not a specific individual or specific company. So the literacy on smart local energy systems is something which is relevant across the whole nation. So everybody will be impacted and needs to come delivered centrally. Then there are other things which are specific sectoral things or subsystem things that I said. For example, we're talking about retrofit, and there are professions within that to be developed. Retrofit coordinator being one, architectural technician, which was mentioned in our work with Bristol, to be another one. So there are specific career development options which will be relevant to those areas within the smart local energy system, where the stakeholders themselves will be interested in funding things. So there is sectoral investment that needs to come from the sectors themselves and companies. But before that can happen, demonstrating the relevance, usefulness, and benefit of doing that needs to be demonstrated and funded centrally, because all of those things that we're talking about are financially and socially beneficial. Most of us just don't know about that.
Thanks, Rosanna. So now I think we'll draw the panel to a close in the interest of time, because I want to make you the participants do a bit of work for us. We have two questions that we'd like to ask you, and we'd welcome your comments in the chat. So over the next 2 or 3 minutes or so, we have two questions. What do you think the priorities should be, and who should be responsible for taking the lead to address skills gaps, some of which we've heard about today? And the second question is, what would you find most useful from the toolkit to address internal skills gaps, internal referring to internal to the local authority? So we'd welcome your answers or your thoughts to in response to these questions in the chat over the next. We've got a couple of 2 or 3 minutes when we can ask you to do a bit of work for us, actually. So we'd be grateful for your input. And I note, I've already noted Joe's comment about Muppets in answer to the second one. So you're not going to live that one down, Joe. We'll give you a couple of minutes to put your comments in. I can see some rolling into the chat. And certainly if you have thoughts after the webinar and you want to be in touch to send them, we'd be more than happy to hear from you as you think about these really quite difficult questions. And certainly, we will admit that we're very keen, particularly on the second question, because we really do want to be sure that the toolkit that we're developing in the ARIS program is well suited to the real need that you have, and that it's going to be genuinely helpful to you. So, if you can only answer one, please answer the second one. Okay, so being mindful of the clock, what I would like to do is to take the opportunity as part of closing, really to thank everybody for attending today, to thank particularly the speakers and panelists who have brought some really good thinking, some good ideas, some good insights to this question of how we deploy people and skills correctly to support the local energy projects that we're all seeking to support and deliver. So thank you very much to everyone. Thank you to those who have contributed their comments and questions in the chat. We are continuing our our program of work, and pardon me, I would just highlight a couple of things that for your particular attention. We will be doing some specific work around data and digital skills gaps in local authorities and how we might address them. And Anna Stegman's email address is provided there. You can get in touch with her, and she'll correspond with you on that. For those of you who may be interested in knowing more about the toolkit itself and possibly taking part as part of our development process, really on the user testing side of things, by all means, we'd be delighted to hear from you and to have a conversation with you. And there's an email address there, aris at the Catapult domain. So please get in touch. We would very much welcome conversation with you. I see the chat is really filled up, so we have lots of rich material there to work with. We'll be taking that, bringing it into the program of work that we're doing. The webinar itself has been recorded and it will be made available. And I'll just close by thanking everybody once again for taking part. Thank you very much, and we look forward to being in touch to continue the conversation over the coming months. Thank you.